Stellantis and LG Energy made a big announcement the other day about a $5 billion EV battery plant that's going to be built in Windsor, Ontario. It's going to be 45 gigawatt hours of capacity. And for context, that's just a little smaller than Tesla's big gigafactory down in Nevada. It's going to create 2,500 jobs. This is really a big deal. And to explain, put a little context around it for us, I'm going to talk to Joanna Kyriazis, who's the Senior Policy Analyst for Clean Energy Canada. Welcome to the interview, Joanna.
Hi, Markham. Thanks for having me.
Look, give us an overview of this and why this is important to the Canadian automaking industry.
Yeah, so yesterday's announcement was really a transformative announcement. Over the past 2 decades, we have seen investment in Canada's auto sector decline. We have seen the number of vehicles that we produce annually decline. And then I think that there was a real question about what the EV transition would mean for the Canadian auto sector and Canadian auto workers. There were fears that that would mean job losses. But what we're seeing now is that's not at all the case. Right, with yesterday's announcement to bring the first large-scale battery plant to Canada, combined with some of the other recent announcements from General Motors and BASF to bring battery component production to Quebec, Canada's not only now on the EV battery map, but we're also positioning ourselves to play a really central role in electrifying the entire North American auto industry.
So I understand that there are a couple of reasons why they would invest in Canada. One, of course, is because Ontario has a very significant automaking industry already, and it's beginning to shift over to EV manufacturing. But critical minerals plays a big role in this, doesn't it?
Yeah, Canada is one of the top countries in the world when it comes to battery supply chain potential, and its access to the critical metals and minerals that go into EVs and their batteries is one big reason why that's the case. Now, I do think that our access to critical minerals is one of the many reasons why Canada has been able to attract some of these large battery investments lately. However, I do think that we still have some time before we see those projects come online and actually start feeding into the battery supply chain. But with downstream buyers like the Stellantis battery plant, that's really going to help to ramp up Canada's mining and refining capacity. It's going to help to de-risk those projects and just offer a very clear buyer for those supplies.
Both companies made the point in the press release that they see this as an important part of their global EV supply chain development. This is not just a single plant. It's part of a supply chain, and there will be other jobs created, upstream and downstream of that. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, you're right. I saw that too, where I wasn't sure if Stellantis was talking about the recent investments that have already been made in Canada's battery supply chain. And so that made Canada a more attractive country because we've already got some activity going. Or if Stellantis was talking about the likelihood that this investment would catalyze further investments in Canada's battery supply chain. But regardless, I do see this as just being a real domino effect. The more activity we have going on in the battery supply chain, the more we'll attract, because automakers really want to co-locate as many parts of the battery supply chain in one location to reduce costs, to make it logistically easier, and to reduce emissions.
Right. Now, one of the things that struck me about this is, this is one of many announcements we've seen over the last couple of years from the automakers, global automakers, who are staking out their turf. They're accelerating their shift to electric. And it's almost become an arms race. The industry is restructuring, and everybody wants to be competitive. And to do that, you have to be competitive in electric. And so they're building supply chains, they're building plants in key markets or retooling existing plants. And I think that larger context is really important for Canadians, because if you have if you have a center of EV manufacturing in China, in one emerging in Japan, another in Korea, and then in Europe, and then the next one is North America. And we're a little late to it, but we're finally getting around. And this is about, in my opinion anyway, this is about North America competing in that EV arms race. Would you agree or disagree?
Absolutely. Until about 5 years ago, the battery industry was really concentrated in Asia. And as you mentioned, 5 years ago, the EU really woke up to the opportunity and has been rushing to build out its own battery supply chain, and is actually on track to capture about 25% of global battery market share by 2025. So it's catching up. Now it's North America's turn. And I just am floored by how fast things are moving. Just over the last year, we have seen at least $30 billion of battery related investment coming into mostly the US, although, Canada has really stepped up and is landing some of these big EV manufacturing and battery plant investments now too. So I really do see this as North America's turn. And one thing that I'm really interested in watching playing out is if North America's auto industry really does try to compete on clean batteries, right? All of these big players who've invested in Canada have noted Canada's clean electricity as a big draw, because then they can power low carbon manufacturing. And so yeah, I'd love to see Canada and the US together position themselves to compete on clean EVs and batteries.
Now, a final point here, and I've done some interviews recently with companies they're surveying consumers. And it was only a few years ago, I remember doing some interviews with pollsters who, the average EV buyer was, professional couple with high income, and they kind of had a green worldview. And that's completely changed in just the course of maybe 3 years. Now EVs are mainstream, and well over 50% of Canadians are planning on buying an EV in the near future. And all of this seems to just feedback loops for the industry. And, more consumers want them, then the more the industry makes investments in new plants and so on. That, I think, is, consumers' change in attitude towards EV has got to be a big driver of this arms race.
You're absolutely right. And I'm seeing the same thing, whether it's the tech lovers who want to be first adopters of new technologies who are going out and getting EVs, the folks who do worry about their personal carbon footprint and so want to make a responsible choice by going to buy an EV, the working mom like me who wants to have one less errand to run and avoid trips to the gas station, maybe wants to get an EV for the convenience of it. And then everybody who wants to insulate their wallets from these rising gas prices are also really starting to look at EVs as a real option. So EVs work for everybody for different reasons. And as we're seeing this manufacturing capacity ramp up, we're going to be seeing more EV makes and models coming to the market that fit different Canadian driving patterns and different Canadian lifestyles. So I really do think we're hitting a tipping point right now, and we'll see the shift to EVs accelerate in the next few years in Canada.
Well, Joanna, thank you very much. I always appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me.